Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. At BriteVibe, we believe everyone deserves to be happy. But in today's world, everywhere you turn, there is division and negativity. At BriteVibe, we have created a global movement to bring 8 million people together who are inspired to live bright, live bold, and share bright vibes. Alone, it can be hard to change, but together we can change the world. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. All right, Austin and Chuchu Mao, welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. So happy to have you on today.
So great to be here.
Yeah, exciting. We're actually friends, so this is a cool podcast because a lot of times I'm talking to people I've never met before, but we've spent time together, so that's even more fun. You guys are the co-founders of something called Ceremonia, and that's Ceremonia. Ceremonia. Tell us, what is Ceremonia?
Ceremonia is a nonprofit church here in Colorado where we work with psychedelics of psilocybin and ayahuasca as sacraments. And so we host retreats for people like yourself, and primarily with founders and entrepreneurs, change makers, etc., and guide people through this transformational spiritual journey, integrating the best of what we know of psychotherapy and psychology into psychospirituality and deep levels of interconnection.
And the unique part of our program is that we have 2 weeks preparation and then 5 weeks of integration, aiming to create the most endurable transformation. And as you know, you experience yourself, and it works. And we also, focus on facilitate the process rather than the content. We enable people, empower people to find the connection to their own inner healing intelligence, to heal and to grow and to empower. And rather, we enable teaching people tools rather than just dealing with whatever content or story they're having at the moment.
And so I want to have you guys on today to really talk about, kind of maybe in a way demystify, and then also for people that don't know that much about it. I think psilocybin, the general term for that is mushrooms, right? There's many varieties, but there are some medicinal mushrooms. These aren't the kind you put on pizza, or if you did, you'd have a very interesting experience. So these are really medicinal mushrooms that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And you're also talking about ayahuasca, which originally I think came out of South America, Peru, and some of those regions, right? And this is another medicine plant. They call these plant-based medicines, correct? So there's kind of this whole movement now to get these legalized. So a couple states have this legal, and I think more on the way. But in essence, these have been Schedule 1, drugs. I mean, these were considered, right up there with like a cocaine and a heroin, which we know that these aren't like cocaine and heroin or any other drug. These are actually medicines. And so part of the podcast today is I think we just need to explain a little bit about what these things are, why you guys, what was your path that kind of brought you to want to facilitate these. I know you both have had experience with them in the past, and then maybe just answer any, even though we don't have live callers on today, just kind of answer some questions around what is this and why does it work and what results that you've been having with it, because I think it's an important step in the evolution of medicine, psychology, spirituality. I mean, it kind of integrates all of these things, and I'm sure more. You guys are the experts on this, but so let's just start with the ayahuasca and the psilocybin. Just a high level overview of what that actually is. What are those things?
Great, yeah, it's a really exciting time right now for these sort of medicines because we are pending legalization at a federal level for various psychedelics. Psilocybin is the active psychotropic compound in psilocybin mushrooms, right?
Got it.
And these mushrooms have been around for tens of thousands of years. And there's a lot of anthropological evidence that even some of the great religions and great spiritual teachers used psilocybin mushrooms to have extraordinary transpersonal experiences.
Philosophers.
And philosophers, exactly. So what psilocybin and ayahuasca do is it induces a state of a transpersonal state, which literally means to come out of self. But one way that I like to relate this to is the Imperial College of London in 2016 put advanced meditators clocking over 30,000 hours, which is a lot of meditation hours.
Yeah.
And those on that study was LSD through functional MRI scans, scanning their brains, right? And found that the default mode network, which is two areas of the brain that are sort of our patterning areas of the brain, were temporarily quieted, very much like children's minds, right? And so, in other words, what happens in this transpersonal state is that it's like a medicine that accelerates one's ability to get out of themselves, right? Very much like the goal of, if there is a goal, the goal of meditation. So just imagine, we often equate this to like 10 years of therapy in 10 hours, right? In fact, that's something that we really see. The level of access to the suppressed and deeply held emotional content that we've pushed down or not even aware of in our subconscious bubbles to the surface in a way that can be safely held by ourselves, right?
Yeah, and we experience this journey together, and we talk about it. That when we talk about freedom from suffering, to fully actualize our power, it's like important to let go of this concept of I, and feel, it's connect with the oneness, that we're all one. And I think from a spiritual standpoint, mushroom enable us to get out of the concept of I and have more inner connection, and connection with our surroundings, with the people around us, with the divine source, whatever. And from a psychology standpoint, that, we talk about parts work in our framework, that being with psilocybin, it not removes the protector, it relaxes the protector of ours, so that we can get in touch with our inner child that carries burden from our past trauma, so that we can do the healing work with the mushroom present when we have safe space.
Yes, yeah, very interesting. And so what and I know you're very, just knowing you as friends, I know you're very passionate about your work. But kind of what was the catalyst for even getting into this kind of work? Because you've been doing this many, many years. This isn't something, I mean, well, a lot of us, this is starting, it's not even mainstream yet, but it's having more and more awareness and especially in psychology, or, psychology circles and medical it's starting to have more and more of a presence. But for a lot of people listening to this podcast, they may have never even heard of these things, or if they've heard of them, they don't really understand them. And so again, I'd just love to demystify, but you guys have been doing this work for years and years and years. So kind of what brought you to this work?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that psychedelics is actually a big part of mainstream culture, right? If you look at rock bands and
Right.
um,
Timothy Leary
yeah,
and right.
yeah,
Right.
amazing artists and
Right.
work come out of that. And one of the most incredible statistics I've read is that 12% of America has used a psychedelic, right?
Oh, interesting.
That's a very high number. And it's actually 85% of college graduates.
Oh, wow.
which is a very high
Right.
number.
Right.
And so much more of America has used psychedelics than I think most people are even aware of.
Right.
That said, I had used psychedelics recreationally for many years, through Burning Pit festivals, et cetera. And we both did that together for some time. But it wasn't until I received an invitation in 2020 from a dear friend of mine to go sit with ayahuasca in a ceremony, which is an intentional shamanic setting in the jungle of using this. And when I went there, I had a chip on my shoulder thinking, okay, what could this teach me? Because I've already tried it so many times. But, um, you know, uh, long story short, it was incredibly life changing for me. I could not have even predicted um, what I discovered. And at that time, I had very little access to like my long term memory. I couldn't remember my childhood.
Mm.
And what I discovered under the medicine is I had a traumatic incident as a kid um, that led me to repress all of my memory.
Oh, wow.
And what happened there is that, I I became a textbook psychology case. Even though I studied psychology before, like I had no idea that it would be me that would
You're your own patient. Yeah.
exactly. And what it did is I unlocked the my memories, and I unlocked what ultimately became the renaissance of my life. I
Mm.
started writing poetry again and reading again and being inspired again. Whereas, it's not like I lived a terrible life. I was a successful entrepreneur, but um, but it's nothing like what I feel and am capable of now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and for me, I grew up in China. We have a whole different sets of value. And I think like a lot of the generational trauma that we shared as for scarcity of like us as human only have value through our achievement, through how much money we make. And growing up from there and then came in here and then using psychedelics, I remember, I grew up with a very not terrible relationship with my mom because of all the values, all the stress and how the educational system is in China. And I remember the first time taking psychedelics and I called my mom and saying, I love you for the first time.
Mm.
And after not talking with her for many years, all
Oh, wow.
the bad experience we shared, and then being in ceremony, and then from that and finding the power and determination to heal our relationship through my unconditional love, through my embodiment of like love and understanding of that, and then from impact my mom and heal our relationship, heal her relationship with my dad and all that, and watching her from someone who has a serious like psychology, mental health problem to
Mhm.
someone who has um, access to like art, to freedom, to more travel and all of that. And now because of the work I am doing, and she said, now I'm volunteer because I understand what it means to be in service from a like middle-aged Chinese woman. That's really impactful for my personal journey. And after I get more and more healing and experience like Austin and finding more freedom, I just realized that for someone like me, a small town girl in China, to be able to experience this healing, that there is a deeper um, mission for me to share this with more people. And the reason I get into this work, because finding psychedelics is like big aha, but there's a long process of learning how to be with this medicine, how to use this medicine integrally, like with integrity and in a way that benefits me rather than as another escape route. And then to witness a lot of people, go into psychedelics because now it's a train, and then see them coming back and life get wobbly, life like get really challenging and they don't know why. And I experienced that myself. Like psychedelics brought me a lot of tremendous healing and revelation, but also there are moments of I don't know how to integrate, and that get me into a really painful state of life. And then that is what lead me to learn more about using this medicine, trying to provide like a standard or understanding of like how do I use this medicine to benefit people, to provide extreme safety so that people can get what they want and need without taking the risk. And that's what lead me to this work.
And I think it's like any other, we're definitely calling it medicine for a reason, and I've experienced it with you guys, and I'll preface that to say that you're operating out of Denver, Colorado, where it's decriminalized. I think isn't that accurate? Is that the accurate term? And so it is. You guys can operate, a public. You have a website, and you're signing up. People. I was there with, I don't know, 10, 15 other business, like you said, leaders of business, CEOs, entrepreneurs, professional medical professionals. I mean, it was not a bunch of hippies sitting around smoking weed or, taking a hit off a bong. It wasn't that. I mean, this was a very professional setting, I guess is what I'm saying. But you can misuse anything. You can misuse any medicine. I mean, antihistamines, they turn into, I can't even remember what they turn it into that, drug addicts use, right? But so you can misuse it. And I think psychedelics probably got a bad rap because the original research found therapeutic benefits, but then people started just using it recreationally or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't in a professional setting. It wasn't in a intentional setting. And so it look like just another drug, I'm sure, to people who had never done it before. So I think that, you made that, I think you both have kind of touched on that, there's recreational use of these types of things. Now, not ayahuasca as much, because I think you there's reasons that you get physically a little bit more ill on ayahuasca. It's not a fun, but I will say I've done medicine, the psilocybin twice, once with you and once before. And I will say that I, I'm pretty sure I will never be a drug addict, because it is not a physically fun experience for none of those were physically fun experiences for me. They were very uncomfortable. I was like, this is the opposite of anything that I could consider recreational for me personally. And it could have been the setting of, they were, the times I've done that was under a therapeutic setting, with intention, with a purpose, right? There was a lot of thought and care and put into those experiences. It wasn't just, oh, let's take something to see if we can get into an altered state. And I'll let you kind of address that however you choose.
Yeah, we call it the work with a capital W for a
Right,
reason. It's it's because you're meeting yourself
right.
in a level of depth and capacity that you've never met yourself in. And so drudging up like grief and guilt and shame and anger and fear that maybe has been locked away for so long. And in the experience of that, being able to experience joy and peace and love, harmony in a capacity that we've never experienced either, right?
Yeah, because when we suppress our feelings, we're not only suppress the bad ones, we suppress the good ones altogether.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And something that I also feel is really important is to demystify where the bad rap that psychedelics comes from,
Mhm,
right?
mhm. Yeah, please
50s
do.
in the 50s and 60s, um, psychedelic psychedelics use for therapy was the most studied psychiatric drug in the history of psychiatry. It was
Mm.
considered absolutely revolutionary. More than 100,000 participants, over 1,000 studies. John Hopkins University,
Wow.
Harvard,
I had no
Oxford,
idea.
all over. Okay. But what happened was it started being associated with the anti-Vietnam conflict, right?
Mm,
And then Nixon, in his desire to for the rebid of the presidential election, wanted to disenfranchise minority voters, and um, so what happened was mushrooms, LSD, and cannabis got lumped in and put onto Schedule One.
mhm,
What's really crazy is if you look at Wikipedia and you just search for psilocybin safety, you'll see that it's considered one of the safest medicines on the planet. I mean, it's
mm,
organic, it can grow in your backyard,
mhm,
and there's almost no contraindications for it, right? And there's no recorded deaths from these medicines. But interestingly, it got put on Schedule One, whereas heroin and cocaine got put on a lower schedule. And so, literally for decades, up until 2013, researchers, scientists couldn't even study the things on Schedule One
mm,
until John Hopkins got an exemption from the DEA to start studying it, and then released and published a landmark paper in 2013.
mm,
And now ketamine
mhm,
was federally legalized as the first psychedelic in 2019. MDMA is set to be federally legalized next year, which
mhm.
is another considered psychedelic. And then in 2025, psilocybin is considered to be federally legalized.
Wow.
And if you look at the studies being published now from these major universities, it is edifying, of course, with better modern science,
Mhm,
the same kind of results that were coming out in the 50s and 60s. And that's to
mhm,
say that the effectiveness of these medicines in treating PTSD, depression, um, are orders of magnitude more effective than any other medicine known to man.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to address, there are people took the medicine without the safe setting and without like a
mhm.
good intention and then getting into any weird loop. That's very common. I think that you can touch up on that too, like how important to have a inner safety and outer safety in order to journey with the medicine most effectively and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what Chuchu is speaking to is this is fundamentally different than popping a pill, right?
Right.
Because
Yep.
the Western kind of practice is like, I want a pill for everything. I want a pill for fat loss. I want a pill for
Mhm.
my
Right.
depression, et cetera, right? Psilocybin and ayahuasca sacraments are most effective when paired with um, a context that can be viewed as therapeutic in nature or shamanistic or spiritual in nature, right?
Mhm.
And 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 when it's paired with this sort of intentional work, the possibilities are endless. Like
Mhm.
96% of the people that come through Ceremonia say it's the most transformative experience of their lives.
Hmm.
And the actual definition of that in sort of the medical context is akin to the birth of a first child or a death of a parent.
Wow.
Like that's how transformative
Mhm.
people say this experience is.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Matt, you can speak.
Before I do, I have yes, I have comment and color on this whole thing. The just from obviously my personal experience. Um, but what exactly? So, I guess you can describe kind of the give us the what are you actually taking over what period of time in your specific case? You do like a 5 day, 6 day retreat. What exactly are you taking? How are you taking it over what period of time? So we can again kind of make it more real that this isn't, again, you said we're not swallowing a pill, right? So what's happening over those 5 or 6 days?
Yeah, I'll share our protocol,
Yeah, there we go. Mhm.
and I think that because I can't speak for everybody, right? First, I'll just set like there's a difference between a medical model and a ceremony model, and
Mhm.
we are at the intersection of both. The medical model is typically one-on-one with a trained therapist. Most of them are underground right now, and it's about a 4 hour session of somebody ingesting mushrooms, which can be raw mushrooms or in a tea or they're in a chocolate. There are different forms of taking it.
Okay.
And lying down um, with an experience, typically with blindfolds and music, right?
Okay.
The ceremony is typically with a group and a group that is, again, each person on their own mat.
Mhm.
And in a solo experience, again, with eye masks, and then in a ceremony, they're typically space holders like us that are playing music, live music combined with some recorded music, etc. Um, the wo-
Always brings more ritual, brings more the elements, more connection with the spirit. That turns to be more of a theme for
yeah,
the ceremonial
yeah.
model.
So our protocol is an 8 week program, right? 2 weeks of online prep work, which includes Zoom calls, readings, online coursework that help you prepare for meeting yourself, right? And so the goal of these preparatory calls is to give you the tools and the space to be with what is, which is sort of a Buddhist concept, to
Right.
be with whatever experience you're having, to experience that fully, right? Because as a kid, like our parents used to say, don't be angry, don't cry. And then we learn to stuff down our emotions. Now, in reparenting ourselves, repatterning ourselves, we get to like actually allow that forth and create space for it. Then we have a 5 day retreat where in the daytime we're doing workshops that again
Mhm.
are going from mindfulness, which enhances awareness, into practical psycho-spiritual tools, from the most advanced techniques in psychotherapy as well as ancient wisdom from spirituality. And then we do a group ceremony where people will take a tea of the sacrament of psilocybin mushrooms.
That they made themselves
Yeah,
when they're creating relationship with the medicine.
yeah. And then they're in uh, this room that we're standing in right now, with a um, with about a 4 to 6 hour experience under the medicine, while we are playing music, while we are supporting people, etc. And in that space, there's no talking to each other. There's no touching. It's a very solo, inwards, deep experience.
Mhm.
Right? And then that's repeated over 3 ceremonies over the 5 day period,
Mhm.
followed by integration work. Integration is when we take our new way of being and this felt sense of like, oh my God, I feel so differently, and then create practical tools that people can bring home to um, to be with life's challenges.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And I would add that we know that psychology are actually and started with Roman churches that they want to study the connection with the spirit and stuff. So there's a reason that we find the sweet spot of combining the psychology and spirituality. And we believe the true healing power comes from ourself with the capital S, that we believe, our church believes that the medicine is not healing you, the facilitator is not healing you. We're just creating the environment for your inner healing intelligence to heal yourself. All the empowerment is coming from inside yourself. And there's the power of combining this together comes from my experience and many of us experience. Like when we go to the jungle and do a ceremony with the indigenous people, it's we forgot often that's their lifestyle, that we have a completely different sets of value and different lifestyles, that we need a preparation to create a relationship with the medicine, to have understanding with our mind, because our mind is the biggest protector. And then we need to find the ways to use the takeaway, the breakthrough that we get, and how do we bridge that into our life, because we changed, though our world around us didn't change. How can we make that endurable for us? And the psychology part is for us, prepare us as modern people to have understanding and to have a set of tools and value to support us to make sense of our experience and provide more inner safety so that we can connect more of the inner intelligence. And also the value of the spiritual side is like, there's the big power of what we provide is the connection with nature, because that's where we're coming from. All this healing power and intelligence and a deep reverence and gratitude is part of the healing. The more we connect off, like our life is a gift, that every minute of this human experience is a gift, then we can understand our sorrow, our pain. They are part of this human experience. Those are inevitable, but suffering is optional. Like we can choose our relationship. When we see that with our awareness so clear, we can now choose our relationship through the deep connection we find. And I think that is what makes ceremony experience extremely powerful and exceptional, because of the combination of the two, because of bridging the modern psychology, the science, with indigenous wisdom, because those wisdom keepers, that there's so much depth and value in that as well.
Mm. Mhm. Yes, totally. So what are people experiencing? Right. So we've touched on your story. We've touched on the fact kind of how this thing works. And I do want to just mention here, because you've used the word church a couple times, but it's not in the sense, I'm from the Midwest. I live on the East Coast now. I think of a church as a building with people that come on Sunday morning to a pastor and small groups, right? That's not, just so there's no confusion. You're not looking to try to you're definitely wanting to help people using this medicine. You're How do you want to differentiate yourself from? I'll let you decide how you want to differentiate yourself, because you've used the word church, and I know that's the legal structure at which you're under. But what's the difference between what you're doing there and what I would consider a church? That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a great question. Our mission statement for Ceremonia is to accelerate spiritual connection in community for the
Mm,
psychedelic curious.
right.
If you think about that, when I think of a church, I went to church, a Christian church as a kid.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, it is often a community center, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Not only do they have Sunday service, but they also have
Right.
basketball for kids and art
Right.
programs
Yeah.
and reading circles and so on and so
Mhm.
forth, right?
Right.
And that's something that I feel is often lost in the individualism of American culture.
Hmm.
So there's a huge community element to how we approach this healing work, right?
Hmm.
But ultimately, one of the things that we like to share in our program um, is that when we use a word like God or
Hmm.
Christ or Buddha, whatever, we are communicating different ideas, right? The
Right.
visual image might be
Yeah.
different for each person, depending on how they were raised, what religion they believe in, so on and so forth. But when you feel God or Christ or Buddha or whatever the word is for you, that feeling is very similar, right? It's a feeling of that as we move deeper and deeper into it, feels ineffable, expansive, infinite, powerful, beyond ourselves, right? Something transcendental. And the energy behind the feeling itself is what we are aiming towards, right? This energy of the word that we call God. And so these psychedelic experiences promote that level of spiritual connection. And whatever word we want to use, that's not what we're focused on. What we're focused on is helping the people here feel that feeling of that inner connection to divinity, whatever.
Right.
And again, divinity is a word, right?
Right.
And fundamentally, our belief is that the end point of psychology is the beginning of spirituality. Psychology, as Chuchu was sharing, is a great tool because it gives us modern language and modern frameworks to help us navigate, create a map of like, if I'm feeling this and I try these tools, I can maybe get myself to feel greater peace and acceptance and love, right? But where that can ultimately take us is the spiritual feeling of something so much more than ourselves, this place of oneness and infinite unconditional love and purity. And so as a church, we're not a church as one might think classically, like come here, read passages from the Bible, etc.
Yeah. Right.
We're a church here in community to help you feel yourself in such a capacity that you feel so connected with you and with everyone and everything around you. And that is what we call the inner divinity and the outer divinity.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Many churches, they're in service, in service of God, in service of their people. We are a church that in service of truth. That religions are many, but truth is only one. And the truth we talk about is what Austin shared, that sense of connection. And we support people, many participants come in like, I'm Jewish, I'm Christian, you guys are a church. How does that go? Like we in service of truth. We don't like buy us with any religion, and you can have all the spiritual relationship that you want, but we are here to promote that feeling and the connection, and you get to put whatever framework that in service of yourself.
Yeah.
And
something that I'd love to add is we often get people who have some level of trauma from their religious upbringing. We had from various different religions, various different churches. And so for those people, there's almost a meta level of healing that they get because when they experience us as a church, like our retreat concludes on a Sunday. So we say like, well, welcome to church after that formational experience. And what can happen in a lot of people that grow up with dogma or grow up with pressure from churches or grow up with the feeling of guilt or shame from the notion of sin, right? Here is they get to repattern that, and they get to they realize that they've pushed down spirituality because they've been afraid of it. It's been so correlated with a religion. And then coming through this program, a newfound sense of what it is to experience spiritual connection. And for others who have really strong religious affinity or really strong spiritual connection, it can enhance that significantly. Maybe that's something that you might want to speak
to. Calling me out on that one? Were you calling me out on that one? Yeah. Yes, definitely. So yeah, do you want to? So yes, would you like to share? You want me to share a little of my experience? You want to share other participants? Where I'll let you decide how you want to do that. But yeah, so I was there. I did the 5-day. I did that with some professionals that had researched. One's very much in the psychology field. One really caters to high-end business people, and then we were joined by a group of professional people. Again, there was nobody in that group that was not on their A game professionally, right? I mean, we all come to this work because we need the work, right? If you're living a great life and you're feeling fulfilled and feeling connected to God, you probably don't need this work. But if you're having questions or doubts, this stuff can be a good step towards making a deeper relationship with to your point, with whatever that is, right? It's different for different people. And I've over the course of, I don't know, 20 years ish or 15 to 20 years, um, I've been all over the world and I've studied, different type of spiritual practices. I won't say religions, but spiritual practices. I've studied with Hindu monks. I've studied with Buddhists. I've studied with, spent some time with Jewish people. I mean, so not intentionally, just there was stuff there that I wanted to learn, and they were there when I was there, right? It was part of the community of people learning, um, and so that was, when I came into Ceremonia, it was very much one. I was super curious about psilocybin. I had done, just kind of a one-time experience with a shaman before, but it was just for a day. It wasn't a week-long thing, and I was very curious about what this experience would be, and so I came and, you guys put us through the experience, and I would say that for me, a lot of the what do you wanna call it? The stuff we did during the day, you wanna call those psychological practice? What would those be called?
Experiential workshops.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of the experiential workshop, I'd done pieces, or stuff like that before, but I found that to be very beneficial outside of the actual medicine experience itself. I mean, I got to some deep stuff and some breakthroughs where I was just like, You guys do a reparenting deal, where you're basically you have another individual kinda hold space or take on the role of one of your parents, and I cried like a little kid, and I was like and I thought that honestly, when we went into the exercise, I was like, "This is kind of I've been here, done this," right? I've been to India, I've done the real deal parent process, right? That's what I was thinking in my head, where we spent days and there was a ceremony. I mean, it was a whole ceremony just around parents or children. I mean, it was and within, 30 minutes, I'm crying. I'm like, "What on earth is happening here?" Because I was, just healing some of those, wounds or wants or needs, and then so I found that to be very beneficial part of your process. And then the psilocybin experience itself, you said there was 3 over 5 days. I found, the first one was an amazing experience for me. To your point, how transformational. Definitely, it was top 2 or 3 as far as heightened experiences or peak moments. You kind of go through if you're on a spiritual journey or on a journey of self discovery. Typically, you have peak experiences along the way, and so that was definitely one of those peak experiences where I saw basically, I was taken back to the beginning of time and saw creation unfold on the face of the earth as God was speaking into it, right? I was watching God create the earth and the heavens and the plants and the animals and the water and it was just like a movie that I was getting to but I was a part of the movie and witnessing it. And as I was breathing, creation was breathing. And so it was very beautiful. I
Wow.
think I shared that with you, some of that when I was there. And so, and for me, Christ has become a real focal point of my life and I really have in the last week or two really taken on this kind of Christ as my guru because it has a different connotation than Christ the rabbi or Christ the teacher. It's like, no, no, no. Christ is my guru, meaning I'm in training. He's the teacher, right? And I'm learning from him, right? As a personal connection. And so as I was going through that experience that first night, it was very much anytime that I had doubt or worry or anxiety, because physically it was uncomfortable for me. It wasn't bad. It was just uncomfortable. And I would just ask, "Where are you, Christ?" And then the whole experience, would be white. Everything would turn white. Everything in my visual mind would just turn white, and then there would be a calmness come over me, and then there would be another basically experience of showing me more. And so for me, yes, it was a very that the first day was very euphoric, I guess, in a way. It was a very blissful. I could see, okay, this is why people do this, right? And and then as you and I well both know, the second dose was not as pleasant for me.
Right.
Uh, and it was the opposite of bliss. It wasn't. I could have gotten up and walked out of the room at any time. For me, it was very, push a lot of my buttons. And that was part of the process. And I'm not even going to explain it all because I don't want to, as people decide to go through your workshop, I don't want to give away the punchline there, but it was a very challenging process for me mentally. And I will say it was all mental. There wasn't a lot of spiritual part to it. It was in my mind. And I felt very, at one point, I remember laying there on the mat thinking, okay, guys, just turn on the lights and tell us that you gave us the wrong dose and let's just go on to day 3. I was just like, come on, just say you guys screwed up, you dosed us wrong, and let's just move on. No harm, no foul. Everybody makes mistakes. And so that was not the case.
Mhm.
And some people had marvelous experiences, like I'd had the previous dose, and some had experiences much like mine, and we saw that in the group dynamic. And then the third dose, and those were all different mushrooms, right? You gave us different mushrooms with different intentions, different medicines for different. And then the third dose was very, it was almost a hybrid of those first two,
Mm.
where
Third ceremony.
the third ceremony was almost a hybrid of how I felt, kind of like there was like in the first one, there was a sense once I took the medicine of kind of feeling nauseous and feeling queasy and uneasy. And then it kind of settled in, and then it just became this beautiful symphony of music and visuals. And the second night, it was like it wore off, felt like it wore off, which it didn't. Oh, still there? Yeah. Felt like it wore off super fast. And so then there was this whole experience of that and uncomfortableness. And then the third experience, I kind of started to go down into that euphoric space. I was like, oh, here we go. This is going to be this loving, beautiful. And it didn't, but it started to come out quickly. And I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. And then it did start work. I mean, it was working. And, it really was more of a practical application of how am I showing up in the world and how can I, when I'm off center, where is my center? How can I be refocused? And that for me was really that Christ is my guru, Jesus is my guru, where it was just a one-on-one experience of Jesus showing me uh, practical tools and practical ways to live my life and go deeper in my spiritual practice. And so that's what it became. It was, and you guys were there. Sorry if it looks like we're breaking up a little bit. Yeah, you guys were there, and I literally sat on the floor in a meditative position for I don't know 2 or 3 hours and didn't move, right, like a statue, right? And and so for me, it was a very so the first night was euphoric and kind of this awe-inspiring movie. The second dose was like probably more how I'm addressing life currently. It was addressing life currently, and then the third was like, okay, well, when life hits you, um, here's things that you can do to follow me, follow Jesus, follow Christ, so that you can learn versus just kind of numbing myself or backing out or spiritual escape or whatever you want to call
Being with you here and it was such a magical experience just to participate and witness you in that evolution.
And your experience is actually participants that our subconscious mind somehow knows that we're going through ceremonies and then 3 ceremonies, and everything will make sense when you complete the third ceremony, because now we have, like from your experience, like the first ceremony your experience could be like if we constantly stuck in our mind and what's our life experience could be like. And then the third ceremony is like you went through the 2 pendulum and you are coming back to this, like, we are all God within ourselves, but we have to learn how to be a human before we think or connect that we are God. So I felt that way. We witness so many experiences of beautiful intro, and then have some, we have to go through darkness in order to see more light. So we kind of designed for the second ceremony to be more challenging. And then we come out of the third ceremony, everything makes sense.
it. Yeah. So it was definitely yes. I still use a lot of the practices that I learned there that week. This was almost a year ago. Almost, that's crazy to think it was almost a year ago. But almost a year ago,
Yeah.
right? When were we there? Last December? Was that December? It was a year ago, December.
Remember,
Wow, that
Because
flew
we
by.
talk so often, feel
Yeah.
yeah, Yeah, we talk so often still. We still talk weekly, so it doesn't feel like that long. It feels like
Right. Yes. And,
together.
and so, and yeah, and so yeah, there's daily practices I still do and things that bring me back to that experience. So for me, it was an important part of my spiritual, you could call it spiritual practice, but a good, an important part of my spiritual practice to feel more connected to God and also more inspired and more driven to follow, which I don't wasn't as clear of before.
Yeah, I know we've had the opportunity to connect a few times
Mhm.
since that big experience last December, and just witnessing your um, persistent growth has also been so special. And I'm just grateful for your trust in us and in yourself for to help catalyze um, that that level of like spiritual acceleration.
Mhm.
And it's so cool because um, I think there are very few practices in life that can really accelerate transformation, um, anything close to this, right? And uh, and the process of doing it is as important as the things that come up, right? Because you described your second ceremony as being really hard, and
Mhm.
you're with that challenge. And I just imagine that moving through something that's so hard is probably the most empowering thing that that one could experience
Hmm.
to arrive at this deep level of spirituality, right? If
Mhm.
all this was easy, then it wouldn't
Be
it
as impactful,
wouldn't
right?
be
Yep.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in human nature, there's this need to feel like that I have achieved something because I put in effort, or I've gained something, maybe is a better way to say that, because I put in effort. So I'm exchanging my effort and my will and all this for an outcome. And definitely in this process, that was the relationship. It felt very at the end like, wow, it was time well spent. And even though it was hard, it was definitely worth it. So yeah, it was a good experience. And I will say, as part of that, we did do our research. We did homework. We talked to you before, right? There was an interview process on both sides. And I would say, for anybody thinking about psilocybin or any other type of medical um, medicine like this, a plant-based medicine to help them with any type of trauma, certainly do your research. This isn't something that I would ever recommend. I've heard friends talk about, "Oh yeah, I did mushrooms once and da da da," and we got to see stuff, and it was. And I'm like, when they say see stuff just visually, they had their eyes open, they're walking around in public, or they're at a concert or something like that, and that is not this. And I would just say, if you're going into it because you know that you need growth or you want to heal or um, there's a part of your life that you want to kind of unpack, then definitely get with somebody who knows what the heck they're doing, and has done it, and get somebody who facilitates this thing on a regular basis, I mean, and has pre work and post work and follow up, and because and to your point, it's an integrated thing. It's anybody could just take that medicine, and then it's like it opens a door, but if you can, but the door will reclose if there's not any type of work after, if there's no integration to it, right? It just maybe there's a little bit more light in your world, but it's not going to be transformative. If you want transformation, you've got to do the work, and so it's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
Like it's so interesting because you can literally grow these mushrooms in your backyard, right?
Right,
So it's
right,
not something that is inaccessible,
right.
but um, if you're going to go to something that is going to be deeply impactful for your life, let's say you were going to go into surgery, would you go do that with a friend in your backyard? Or do it yourself on yourself? Probably not, right?
Right, right,
So
right.
if this is set to be life altering, transformative, deeply healing, it's important to do your research and to find somebody that you feel intuitively safe and resonant with, right?
Mhm,
Yeah, and taking psychedelics is not about to go into watch a light show. Yes, we can have fun for the light show, but the immense power lays in when we bring that with our intention and having that connection as our north star. And I want to share earlier something about like, oh, you kind of like, we have to go through some hardship, go through darkness to see light. The hard part of the journey it will show up at some point, and it's like a necessary training for us to find more power through ourselves. But healing doesn't necessarily always have to be hard. Like the hard comes from when we resist, when we are uncertain, when we don't know. But when we experience the hardship and finding a relationship of accepting, of loving what is, then everything doesn't have to be hard anymore, no matter in ceremony or in life.
To your point about doing the research, it's very synchronistic that we're doing this call now, because next week we're launching our first online course to help people. It's a 4-week program. We're offering it for free for a limited time. And it'll be $400 afterwards, $444 afterwards. And it will help people learn about these advanced techniques of self-healing, mindfulness, to psychotherapy, to spirituality, and then help demystify how to find and choose a good psychedelic practice, if that's something that they're looking for.
Yeah.
So,
And we also provided a new service, which is like one ceremony coming through one weekend and days instead of 5 days, 3 ceremony, for people who are curious, who are not who wanting to explore the relationship without a big commitment. That we are offering this for people as well to try it. Normally, you go to a one-on-one session, probably costs you $1,500 just for that one session with some calls. And here we are offering 2 days of workshops, all the food and lodging included, with a long ceremony, only $1,800. Which is,
Very cool. Well, yes. So people will find out more, but if they want to go to ceremonia.org, right? Or no.
Circle.org.
That's right, ceremoniacircle.org, or feel free to Google that, but you'll have all the information up there and update things as things change, and you've got the dates and all that fun stuff. So thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate your guys' time. It's beautiful seeing you both. You look great. Look so happy and healthy and very stylish. You're always much more stylish than I am. In a t-shirt, you got on cool clothes, so I appreciate your style. But yes. We'll reconnect soon, and if people have questions, they can feel free to email you or message you right from the site. So thank you guys for today's time, and good luck with your next call.
Thank you so much.
To be with you soon, and keep going. Cold plunges.
Cold plunges every day. Thank you guys. Thank you for being a part of the BriteVibe podcast. For more information, go to britevibe.com. That's BRITE vibe, VIBE.com. Thank you for listening.